She placed me by the kitchen. That's where I observed my son get married through a swinging door behind a platter of shrimp cocktail. I funded the wedding, every blossom, every seat. But when the music began and the speeches started, I wasn't part of it, not even close. I smiled, remained silent, and after the final piece of cake, I destroyed it all with one phone call. Subscribe if this story reaches you and tell me where in the world are you watching from. There was no sign, no card, no nameplate, no kind greeting, just a folding chair with a paper napkin draped over the seat. That was my spot between a pile of dirty trays and a wheeled cart with a damaged wheel that creaked every time someone moved it. I stood there for several seconds, blinking hard. The smell of marinara lingered in the air, heavy and bitter, clinging to the steam from the kitchen doors. I felt the warmth from the ovens against my back, and something inside me churned. I looked down at my dress, soft mauve chiffon hand-sewn. I had spent 3 hours getting my hair styled that morning, 3 hours believing this day would be as meaningful for me as it was for them. But no one had mentioned it. No one said, "We've made different seating arrangements." No one even glanced at me when I showed up, not even Christopher. He was too occupied, smiling broadly, adjusting his cufflinks, allowing her mother to kiss him on the cheek like she'd brought him up, like she was the one who stayed awake every night when he had nightmares, like she was the one who worked extra shifts when he needed braces, and I couldn't manage both rent and his smile. I gripped my little handbag, beige leather, the one he gave me years ago for Mother's Day when he still called me Mama. My hands were trembling. I could feel it in my wrists, a slight vibration, like something electric trying to escape through my fingertips. The catering manager, a kid who couldn't be more than 20, smiled uncomfortably. They said you were supposed to wait back here, ma'am. The bride didn't want, any visual conflicts with the theme." I gazed at him. "Theme?" He cringed, glancing at the swinging doors. The silver edge struck the wall again with a loud bang. Laughter poured in from the reception hall, followed by a surge of music. Like aesthetic harmony with the photos and all. I sat down gradually. The chair groaned. There was a dark mark on the floor beneath my feet, gravy, perhaps. My shoes stuck slightly when I moved them. I looked at my nails, recently done in a soft pink, then at the cold chicken breast someone had placed in front of me on a cracked white plate. The worst part, I didn't speak up, not one word, because it was his day, because I told myself, don't spoil this for him, don't be that mother. Because I had funded it all and still thought that meant something. I took out the program I'd been given at the church, elegant script on cream cardstock, no reference to me anywhere. Her father escorted her down the aisle, her mother delivered the first speech. I was just the checkbook, the ghost in the kitchen, the woman no one desired in the picture. The door swung again. I glimpsed the chandelier, the band beginning the first dance, Christopher and Rebecca spinning under soft gold light. He didn't glance my way once. I touched my napkin to my mouth, pretending to wipe a non-existent mark. My eyes stung. I told myself it was the onions from the kitchen, the steam, the warmth, not the betrayal. But it was God, it was. And somewhere deep within me, something split quietly, like a hairline crack in glass you don't see until the whole pane breaks. I gazed at the wall before me. There was a section of flaking paint behind a fire extinguisher. I stared at it so intensely, I thought I'd burn a hole through it. That spot became my focus, my anchor, the only thing preventing me from breaking down in front of a server carrying crab puffs. Because if I let it out, if I began crying, I didn't know if I'd ever stop. I took a deep breath, then another. The chicken on my plate had grown cold. I didn't touch it. Eventually, someone brought dessert. I didn't taste it, just gazed at the layers of white and gold. Her colors, her perfect little dream. And then I made the call. It was brief, direct. I didn't need to justify myself, just 3 simple cancellations. The flowers for tomorrow's brunch, the second half of the band's fee, and the open bar that was meant to last until midnight. My voice was steady, calm, measured. And when I hung up, I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel remorse. I felt the first spark of something I hadn't experienced in years, power. I looked down at my hands again, no longer trembling. My heart no longer pounding, just a quiet thrum like an engine starting back to life. The door swung again, another flash of light, of laughter, of the life I was shut out from. Let them celebrate without me. I had my own intentions now. I didn't sleep that night, not for 1 second. I lay in that rigid hotel bed, still in my dress, gazing at the ceiling fan rotating above me like it might suddenly detach and crash onto my chest. I half wished it would. I could still detect the kitchen grease in my hair, the scent of costly roses mixed with the sour smell of my own perspiration. Humiliation adhering to my skin like a second coating. At some point, I removed my shoes. My feet were puffy, they'd ached during the whole reception, but I hadn't dared take them off. I needed to appear respectable even in the kitchen. It was around 2 a.m. when I sat up. The digital clock shone red. My phone vibrated again on the nightstand. I didn't check it. I already knew what was there: missed calls from Christopher, from Rebecca, a text from my niece that simply said, "What happened? Everyone's panicking." I opened the wedding budget spreadsheet on my tablet. I'd been maintaining it carefully for over a year. I knew every cent, every modification, every upgrade, every luxury Rebecca requested, always with a tight smile and that word she wielded like a knife wrapped in silk. Elevated, Eleanor. We just want something a little more elevated. That's how I ended up agreeing to hand-calligraphed invitations from some boutique Etsy seller in Maine. That's how the venue shifted from the community church hall to a restored barn with chandeliers and vintage whiskey barrels. That's how the open bar included a custom cocktail menu and the cake expanded from 2 tiers to 5. I covered it all. No one offered to share the expense, not Christopher, not her parents, and I never asked because I wanted him to have everything I couldn't provide when I was raising him. I scrolled through the charges. My breath hitched when I spotted them: 2 unauthorized transactions made just days before the wedding. Bar tab from a tasting event, dress rehearsal, dinner enhancement. Same restaurant where they seated me in the back near the kitchen again. My stomach tightened. I double-checked the card my card used without consent. And then I noticed the note she left on Venmo to one of her bridesmaids. "His mom is covering everything, might as well go, big wedding vibes." I didn't weep. Not this time. I felt nothing, that peculiar heavy nothing that follows too much pain. Like my insides had gone numb, like my nerve endings had retreated inward to shield themselves. I reached over and switched on the lamp. The light burned my eyes. I went to the mirror above the dresser. My reflection shocked me. There was mascara streaked beneath my eyes. The soft lines of my mouth had solidified into something unfamiliar. My hair was flat on one side, flattened from the pillow. I looked like someone who had aged 10 years in one night. But then something changed. I smoothed my hair back, cleansed my face, sat down at the desk and opened my email. I composed 3 messages. One to the florist: "Please cancel Sunday delivery. The payment balance is suspended. Thank you." One to the band: "Due to changes in the event schedule, we will not need the second performance. Please consider the matter resolved." One to the bar vendor: "We're reducing post-reception services. Please cancel the second shift. Do not process the remaining payment." All were courteous, all professional, but conclusive. It was almost dawn when I clicked send. And when the sky outside shifted from black to bruised blue, I closed my tablet, sat on the bed, listened to the soft drone of the air conditioning, and for the first time in months, I felt like myself again. I wasn't furious, not yet, but I was finished. Finished being convenient, finished being the bank, finished being the afterthought. Let them work it out. Let them scramble. Let them recall the moment the music ceased, the bar stopped serving, the flowers never showed, and wonder why. And maybe, just maybe, they'd remember who made that wedding achievable in the first place. The woman in the kitchen, the one they didn't desire in the photos. The music throbbed through the wall like a distant pulse. I sat there in that folding chair with a dish of cold appetizers and a Diet Coke from the catering cooler and attempted not to listen. But I couldn't help it. Every laugh, every cheer, every clinking glass. It all made its way back through the swinging door like a harsh reminder of where I wasn't. I could hear someone giving a toast. Male voice, probably her father, or maybe Christopher's best man. I leaned back slightly, just enough to catch a view through the gap of the door. There they were, arranged in front of that absurd floral arch I paid $12,000 for. Gold chairs, floating candles, custom neon sign that displayed "The future is forever" in loopy script. I recognized the voices even when I couldn't see the faces. Rebecca's mother, Patricia, with her trademark fake sympathy tone. "Oh my God, Christopher, you are just the most wonderful man alive. Rebecca is so blessed." Then laughter, cheers. I froze. There, sitting at the main table, was Patricia, draped in navy chiffon covered in pearls, like she was born into wealth, which she wasn't. She had met me only 3 times before the wedding, never inquired about my life, never thanked me for the expenses, never even offered to contribute $1. Next to her, Rebecca's father holding court like a suburban monarch. Big booming laugh. Same man who told me at the rehearsal dinner, "We really respect your perseverance raising Christopher alone and all." Must have been tough. Perseverance. As if I'd climbed a mountain, not worked years in scrubs so my child could have a life without second-hand clothes and shared meals. And there was Christopher. My Christopher. Beaming like a stranger, sitting between her parents like he'd always been theirs. I searched for my own family. My sister Linda sat 2 rows back beside our cousin Marie. Neither of them looked toward the kitchen. No one did. I wasn't part of the performance. I was a problem that had been resolved by a chair in the back and a door that closed. Someone moved past me, a server young woman, probably in college. She noticed my plate and smiled, awkward and guilty. "Do you want a refill or something?" I shook my head. "I'm fine." But I wasn't. God, I wasn't. Every part of me hurt. Feet, shoulders, jaw clenched so hard it throbbed behind my eyes. My heart sat heavy in my chest like a chunk of something spoiled that refused to budge. I stared down at the plate. 3 olives, a piece of brie, a pathetic little triangle of toast. I hadn't eaten since breakfast, but I couldn't make myself put anything in my mouth. My stomach was a closed fist, my throat a narrow tube. I thought of the seating chart I'd asked Rebecca carefully weeks ago. "Have you determined where I'll be sitting?" She smiled, tight, bright. "We're still organizing everything. Don't worry, Eleanor, you'll be included." I should have realized. I did realize, somewhere deep down, I knew. I was being handled, moved around like a prop. Invited for the checkbook, endured for the appearances, but never truly desired. The worst part, I agreed to everything. I let them erode my role, one small compromise at a time. No speech from me. No mother-son dance because they said it would seem awkward. No photos before the ceremony. No reference in the program. Just a seat in the kitchen. I heard Christopher laughing again, that deep rumbling laugh he used to have as a child when I'd chase him through the sprinkler in our backyard. The same laugh I hadn't heard aimed at me in years. I felt something surge in my chest. Not grief, not disappointment. Rage. Quiet, measured, devastating rage. I stood up, walked toward the swinging door, placed my hand on the edge and pushed just slightly, just enough to peek through again. I locked eyes with Rebecca. She saw me. She knew where I was, knew what she had done, and she smiled. Not apologetically, not nervously, but calmly, assuredly, like it was natural. Like I was exactly where I belonged. She turned back toward her bridesmaids, threw her head back and laughed. That was when I understood. This wasn't an error. This wasn't an oversight. This was intentional. They had arranged it, selected it. She didn't want me there, and Christopher had allowed her. They both had. And just like that, something inside me adjusted. Not broken, no, not this time. Repositioned. My place in their lives had altered, and I was done pretending I didn't see it. Let them have their spotlight. Let them drink their champagne. They thought I was invisible. They had no clue what I could remove. The toast began while I was still standing by the kitchen door. Someone had lowered the lights in the reception hall. I could see the shine of string lights above and the glimmer of gold from the chargers on each table. The mic screeched once, and then her father's voice echoed through the room like a game show announcer. "To our daughter Rebecca and her wonderful new husband Christopher." Cheers burst out. I took a step back. The kitchen behind me was hectic. Metal trays banging, voices rising, a server arguing about table 12's gluten-free dish. I shifted to the side, leaned against the wall. The plaster was cold against my back. The smell of garlic and hot oil stuck to the air. From the other side of the door, her father kept going. "When Rebecca was young, she told us she wanted a fairy tale. A prince, a castle, and a happy ending. Well, sweetheart, today you achieved it." More applause. My breath caught. He was never there when Christopher was young. Never saw me clean vomit off the bathroom floor at 3 a.m. Never watched me stitch buttons back onto his school uniform. Never drove miles on frozen roads just to take him to a chess competition. But today, they were rewriting the narrative, and I had been deleted. I looked down at my hands again. My fingers were mottled, the skin thin, slightly shaking. The cold air vent above made my arms prickle. Then came Rebecca's mother's turn. Her voice was sugary, overpracticed. "We're so thankful to be joined today by so many people who adore Rebecca and Christopher, and to welcome Christopher into our family. He's like a second son to us already." Another cheer. Like a second son. Not a word about me. Not a word about the woman who brought him up. No, thank you for everything, Eleanor. No, we appreciate your generosity. No, this day wouldn't be possible without her. Nothing. I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted copper. My feet throbbed, but I refused to sit. Then came the part I had been dreading, the groom's speech. Christopher stepped up to the mic. He looked radiant. Strong jaw, confident posture, tailored suit that I had helped fund. I had seen him take his first breath in a neonatal intensive care unit. Now he stood there, grown glowing, a stranger. "I just want to thank everyone for being here," he said. His voice was deeper than I recalled, refined like he'd practiced it in a mirror. "I feel so fortunate. Rebecca, you've made me the happiest man alive. And to your family, thank you for accepting me like your own. I truly feel at home with you all." My throat shut. "And to everyone who helped make today happen, thank you. This has been the most amazing day of our lives." My name was never spoken, not once. I had funded the venue, the catering, the photographer, the DJ, the linens, the custom neon sign. I even paid for the dress Rebecca wore as she stood there with her hand on his arm, and yet I didn't exist. The servers clapped. I didn't move. The band resumed. The dance floor began to fill. Someone brought me a piece of cake on a plastic plate. I stared at it. Vanilla with raspberry filling. Her favorite. I don't enjoy raspberry. Never did. I looked at the thin gold fork they gave me. My hand was steady now. I remembered when Christopher turned 10 and requested chocolate cake with sprinkles. I worked 2 additional shifts just to buy the one from the bakery he'd indicated in the window. His eyes sparkled when he saw it. He embraced me so tight that day. That boy was gone. In his place, a man who didn't even recall to save me a chair. I set the cake aside. I waited until the last bite of dessert was served, until people were standing up, loosening their ties, cleaning icing from their lips, until the music reached that perfect peak. Then I walked out of the kitchen, straight past the servers, straight past the bar, out the side door. The air outside was cool and quiet, the kind of silence that buzzes in your ears. I took out my phone. 3 calls, one to the florist, one to the band, one to the bar manager. Polite, direct, no need for justifications. By the time I walked back into the hotel, the wheels were already moving. Tomorrow's brunch terminated. Late-night music set withdrawn. Second bartender and cocktail menu eliminated. I had stayed silent long enough. Let them enjoy what's left. Let them sense the gap, the absence. Let them ask questions. I didn't care if they called me dramatic, petty, ungrateful. They already deleted me from the story. All I did was turn the page. The hotel room smelled like rose lotion and something vaguely metallic. Maybe the stress, maybe my skin. I sat cross-legged on the bed, the comforter still perfectly arranged beneath me, untouched since I checked in 2 nights ago. I hadn't wept. Not once. But something inside me had turned cold. Not frozen, no, frozen things are fragile, they crack. I was hardening, tempered. The sun hadn't even risen yet. I reached for my purse and retrieved my phone. 6 missed calls, 2 voicemails, a dozen texts. "Christopher, where are you? Why is the brunch canceled? Mom, seriously, this isn't funny." "Rebecca, I don't understand what's happening. Are you okay? Please reply. This is so childish." I laughed quietly. Just a puff of air through my nose. Childish. I opened the banking app again. My fingers moved with the muscle memory of someone who had balanced a checkbook every Sunday for 3 decades. The charges were still there. Unauthorized. Brazen. The bride, my new daughter-in-law, had helped herself to my card for a pre-wedding bar crawl and a spa day with her bridal party. I could see it all in the detailed receipts. Bottles of champagne, manicures, facial treatments, brunch for 8. No one asked me. No one even informed me. The trust I'd held in my chest like an old blanket, warm, familiar, felt torn like someone had taken scissors to it while I slept. I clicked over to my emails. There were 2 new ones. One from the florist. "We're disappointed by the sudden cancellation, but we understand." Per our agreement, no refunds for less than 48-hour notice. Fine. The second email was from the band's manager. We were halfway through setting up when the cancellation came in. It's highly unusual, but your message was clear. We'll leave the deposit intact. Also fine. I wasn't doing this for a refund. This was for me, for the invisible woman in the kitchen chair, for the mother deleted from her own son's milestone. My stomach growled. I hadn't eaten since the day before. The thought of food made me queasy. Instead, I got up, pulled the rigid curtains open, and watched the sun seep into the sky. Orange, then pink, then a pale yellow that made everything look unreal. And then I remembered something. A little red file folder tucked away in the drawer of my dresser back home. Old paperwork, legal things, letters I never discarded. I felt drawn to it like it had been calling to me this whole time. I packed my belongings slowly, took a shower, washed off the perfume and the bitterness, dried my hair, put on jeans and a button-down shirt that still smelled vaguely like lavender soap. Checked out of the hotel without a word. The drive home was silent. Just the sound of tires on pavement and the soft static of the radio playing songs I didn't recognize. The kind of drive where you start to hear your own thoughts loud and unfiltered. He didn't mention you? They all saw where you were sitting. No one did anything. When I pulled into my driveway, the roses I had planted 2 summers ago were in full bloom. I didn't stop to appreciate them. I went straight to the bedroom, opened the dresser, pulled the red folder out, sat on the bed. At the bottom of the pile, beneath old insurance papers and a few photos I hadn't viewed in years, was a letter. The envelope was yellowed at the edges, postmarked from Nevada. A date written in my late husband's writing. The year he left. I remembered finding it weeks after he died. I hadn't opened it then. I couldn't. It had felt like salt in an exposed wound, like letting him speak from the grave when I wasn't prepared to listen. But now I slid my finger under the seal. The paper was thin, his handwriting slanted and familiar. It started simple. Eleanor, I know you never wanted to hear from me again, but I need to tell you something. I felt my pulse quicken. My hands shook slightly. I've been holding a secret and I can't take it to the grave. You deserve the truth. Christopher. He isn't biologically yours. I found out years ago. Sarah was pregnant when we got together. I thought I could pretend he was mine, but he's not. And neither of us ever told you. I stopped reading. The room spun just for a moment, then settled. I read the rest. Apologies, excuses, regrets. Words that meant nothing now. Christopher. My Christopher was the product of an affair. Another woman's child left on my doorstep like a test I didn't know I was taking. And I passed. God help me, I passed. Every scraped knee, every bedtime story, every night shift I took to buy him sneakers and class photos. I passed with flying colors, and yet here I was. Discarded, replaced, erased. But now I had a new clarity. A truth sharp enough to slice through years of silence. And I was done bleeding. I didn't weep even as I sat there with that letter shaking in my lap, the weight of it heavier than anything I'd ever held. I didn't shed a single tear. What would be the point? Tears had built Christopher's childhood. Tears paid for his shoes, his asthma medication, his first car. They filled my pillow after his father left, and again when he walked across that high school stage, not once turning to wave at me in the crowd. I had run out of tears years ago. What I had now was something else. Not grief, not heartbreak. Clarity. I walked to the kitchen and brewed myself a cup of coffee. Black, strong. I sat by the window and watched the neighbor's sprinkler tick-tick-tick across the lawn. It was a normal Sunday morning. But I was no longer the woman who paid for someone else's fairy tale and got a folding chair behind the punch bowl in return. I was no longer the woman who would accept this. Not this. I opened my phone and began with the florist. My voice was steady, courteous. I thanked them for their understanding, confirmed again that Sunday's arrangements would not be required. I didn't explain. I didn't owe them that. The band was next. Same tone, same silence about the reason. Then, the bar service. Hi, this is Eleanor Matthews. Yes, that's right. I'm calling to cancel the cocktail reception for the post-wedding brunch. Yes. No issues. Just a change of plans. Thank you. Click. 3 calls, 3 cuts. I could have left it there. But I didn't. Because I knew what was coming. I turned off my phone. Turned it back on 5 minutes later. 38 unread texts, 3 voicemails. Christopher again. Mom, where are you? The band didn't show. What the hell is happening? Rebecca's mother. I don't know what's going on, but this is incredibly unprofessional. People are asking questions. Then Rebecca herself. Eleanor, seriously. Is this because you were upset about the seating? That's just petty. We had a vision. Don't ruin this. Petty. The word resonated like a slur, like a branding iron, and yet when I closed my eyes, all I could see was her smirking across the reception hall, knowing where I was, knowing what she had done, knowing I wouldn't fight back. Until now. I turned off the phone again. Let them spiral. Let the questions accumulate. Let them realize the bar ran dry because I was the well. That the music stopped because I paid the final note. That the flowers never arrived because the roots were diseased. I cleaned the kitchen, wiped the counters, fed the cat. It was the most calm I'd felt in months. Around noon, the doorbell rang. I didn't answer. Let them knock. Let them sit in the heat of their own discomfort. Later that night, I posted a single photo on Facebook. Not of the wedding, not of me. Just a picture of the check I wrote. Blurred out the account number, left the signature visible. No caption, no explanation. Just that. A truth they couldn't deny. A receipt of sacrifice. And then I logged off. Not just from Facebook. From the guilt, from the silence, from pretending this wasn't betrayal. I didn't need their explanations, their spin, their justifications. Let them sit in the wreckage. I wasn't going to rescue them from it. The silence was the first indication they were scrambling. No more messages, no more calls. Just a strange, stretching quiet. Like the eye of a storm passing directly over my house. I could feel it. The tension, the waiting. They didn't know what I would do next. I didn't either. But it was going to be mine. Monday morning, I made coffee and sat by the window again. No makeup, no earrings. Just me and the day and the hum of the fridge in the background. Christopher hadn't called since yesterday. The last voicemail had been brief, rigid, defensive. You really made a scene, Mom. Everyone's talking. You embarrassed us. I don't know what you were trying to prove, but you crossed a boundary. I didn't even flinch when I heard it. Because here's the truth, no one likes to speak aloud. You can give everything to someone, your time, your money, your love, and still be disposable. You can construct their entire world and still be told you're not part of the aesthetic. The betrayal didn't surprise me anymore. What surprised me was how little I cared now that I'd stopped pleading for their approval. That morning, I removed his contact from my phone. Not just the name, the number remained. I didn't need to forget him. I just didn't want his name lighting up my screen like it still belonged there. Around noon I went out. Grocery store, post office, small errands. Life continued. And in the bakery aisle of all places I saw Marie, my cousin who'd flown in for the wedding. She smiled when she noticed me, but there was hesitation behind it. Eleanor, hey. I nodded. She stepped closer, lowered her voice. Are you okay? I met her eyes. Were you okay? I asked, watching me sit back there. She flushed. I didn't realize that was on purpose. I thought maybe you. No, I cut in gently. You didn't think. That's all. There was a long silence. I'm sorry, she said finally. It was wrong. I should have said something. I nodded once. Thank you. She looked relieved, like that small moment of accountability had freed her. It hadn't freed me. But it was a beginning. When I got home, I found a bouquet on my porch. Carnations. The cheap kind, already wilting. No card. I didn't bring them inside. Instead, I walked them straight to the trash bin. Later that evening, I checked Facebook. The photo of the check had nearly 100 comments. Old friends, colleagues, neighbors, people I hadn't heard from in years. Some were confused, some were outraged, but most understood. One comment stood out. This broke my heart, Eleanor. And I've never related to something so deeply. Thank you for showing us we don't have to stay silent. That was it. The beginning of something new. Not revenge, not spite. Power reclaimed. Let them rage in group chats. Let them spin their own narrative. I wasn't responding. I wasn't explaining. I was finally choosing silence. Not as submission, but as control. And the silence this time was mine. It started with the drawer. A creaky old thing in the guest room dresser. Half stuck, always needing a little hip push to open. I wasn't even searching for anything in particular, just clearing out the remnants of a life I'd been too exhausted to sort through. But somewhere between the yellowing tax returns and expired coupons, I found it. That red folder again. The same one I thought I'd already emptied. But tucked into the sleeve so thin it might as well have been part of the lining was a second letter. No envelope this time. Just folded once, then again. Handwritten. Same slanted script. Same name. My ex-husband's signature stared up at me like a ghost. Robert. It was dated 3 days before his death. Eleanor, if you're reading this, I guess the first letter reached you. I don't know if you opened it. I hope you did. I won't waste time apologizing again. I need to tell you something more. Something I couldn't carry with me. Something I should have said a long time ago. Christopher wasn't just someone else's son. He was never supposed to be yours at all. When Sarah left him at my door, she didn't want to keep him. She was 18, terrified. She asked me to give him up for adoption. I couldn't. I didn't have the heart. I lied to you. I told you he was ours, that it was a mistake from before we got married. You believed me. You raised him. You loved him like he was flesh of your flesh. But the truth is, he wasn't even that. He was a stranger's child. And you made him your world anyway. I don't know how you'll feel reading this, but I hope. God, I hope you know that whatever else I did wrong, I was right about choosing you. You were the only person strong enough to be his mother, not because of blood, but because of who you are. I didn't move. The words sat on my chest like a boulder, not biologically mine, not even accidentally mine, chosen by a man who abandoned both of us, who gave me a child and then walked away like it was a favor. My breath caught. For the first time in days, my knees went weak. I sat down on the edge of the bedpaper still in my hand. 1,000 images flashed in my mind. The first time I rocked Christopher to sleep, his tiny fists curled against my shoulder. His first word, truck. The fever that frightened me so badly I drove to the ER barefoot in winter. The science fair project he stayed up weeping over when the volcano wouldn't erupt. His first real heartbreak. His laugh when he found out he'd gotten into college. Every moment I thought was ours. I had built my life around this boy. I had shaped my identity around being his mother, and now I had to accept something no woman should ever have to. He never truly saw me that way. He loved what I gave, not who I was, not really. If he had, he never would have let her put me in that kitchen. He never would have stayed quiet. He never would have let them erase me. I placed the letter on the bed, smoothed it out with my palm. It didn't feel like betrayal anymore. It felt like freedom. For 32 years I had lived a version of myself that only existed in service to others. Wife, mother, provider, ghost. But now, with that truth staring up at me in ink, faded with age, I saw something new. I had power I didn't even realize. Because I loved someone completely who never belonged to me, and I never let that stop me. Because I chose to stay when others ran. Because I made a family, even when it wasn't written in blood. And I could choose again. Starting now. I left the letter open on the kitchen table, didn't hide it, didn't lock it away, just let it sit there plain and visible, like a truth I no longer needed to protect myself from. I moved through the house like I was seeing it for the first time, the beige walls, the faded photos of Christopher's high school graduation, the dent in the doorframe from when he crashed his bike trying to ride inside. I used to smile at that dent. Now I just stared at it. That house was a museum of sacrifices. Of all the ways I'd erased myself to keep him whole. The faded armchair I nursed him in. The sewing kit I used to hem his pants. The pantry still full of his favorite cereal, Honey Bunches of Oats. Even though I stopped enjoying it years ago. It hit me all at once. I didn't know what my favorite cereal was. I didn't know the last book I'd read that wasn't a parenting guide or something from the hospital's required reading list. I didn't remember the last time I spent money on something just for me. I had lived so long being his mother, I'd forgotten how to be a woman, a person. I poured myself a glass of water and sat on the couch. The silence in the house had changed. It didn't feel lonely. It felt honest. My phone vibrated on the side table. Christopher again. A long message this time. A different tone. I don't know what happened. I've been thinking about everything. Rebecca said she didn't mean to hurt you. I'm sorry if you felt excluded. If I felt, not because you excluded me, not because you left me behind. If I felt It was still about his perception, his comfort, his distance from blame. I didn't respond. Instead, I picked up the remote and turned on the TV. The hum of a cooking show filled the room. Calm, steady. My eyes drifted to the letter again. He wasn't mine. Not biologically, not legally. But I had been his, until he made it clear I was no longer part of the family he was building. The ache inside me wasn't for him anymore. It was for the version of myself I had abandoned to raise someone who never once turned around to ask, "Are you okay, Mom?" All those years, all those birthdays I made special, all those Christmas mornings I stayed up past midnight wrapping dollar store gifts in perfect bows. All those "you go sit, I'll do the dishes" kind of days I never had because no one ever offered. I had been his background music, his safety net, his reliable silence, but no more. That evening, I took every framed photo of us off the wall, not out of anger, not out of spite, because it was time to stop living in a shrine to a version of motherhood that demanded I disappear. I boxed them gently, wrapped the glass in old towels, labeled the box "Memories," not obligations. I cooked dinner just for me, a recipe I saw once on a travel show, lemon butter pasta with roasted cherry tomatoes and garlic, no chicken nuggets, no side of mac and cheese, just what I wanted. I lit a candle while I ate, played soft jazz, set the table for one. It was quiet but not empty. It was the sound of reclaiming something I hadn't realized I'd lost. Myself. The invitation list started with silence. No glitter pens, no gold foil, just a lined yellow notepad and the sound of my pen scratching across it. I wrote the names one by one. Not people I had to invite, people I wanted to. Margaret, my old friend from the ER, who used to sneak coffee into my locker when I worked doubles. Mr. Peterson, my next-door neighbor, who always snowblowed my driveway before I could get out there. Alice from the bookstore I visit every Sunday, who always asks about my week and actually listens. Nurse Helen, who once stayed late on her own birthday to help me cover a shift. No one shared my blood, but every single one had made me feel seen in a way my own son never had. And that was the new theme. People who saw me. It wasn't a wedding, wasn't a holiday, just a dinner at my house with my food at my table. No folding chairs, no back kitchens. I spent the next few days getting everything ready, not because I had to impress anyone, but because I wanted to. For the first time in years, I wasn't preparing something for someone else's story. This wasn't about Christopher. It wasn't about redemption. It wasn't about proving anything. It was about making space for joy. For me. I went to the market and selected the ingredients myself. Fresh basil, garlic, heirloom tomatoes. Not a single frozen appetizer tray in sight. I even bought a new tablecloth, blue with sunflowers. It reminded me of something I would have enjoyed when I was 20, before all the shoulds started stacking up like bricks around my life. On the morning of the dinner, I woke up early and played music while I cooked. Van Morrison, Stevie Nicks, Norah Jones. My house smelled like garlic and olive oil and lemon zest, like warmth, like effort, like home. The first guest arrived just before 6, Margaret with a bottle of red and a huge smile. "You look amazing, Eleanor." I did. Hair soft gray at the temples but loose and confident. A linen blouse that made my skin feel cool. No Spanx. No mascara tears waiting to happen. Just me. They trickled in after that. 6 guests. Laughter at the door. Hugs that lasted longer than they needed to. Wine being poured without asking permission. We ate at the table I once used for folding laundry and helping Christopher with math homework. Now it was full of passing plates, clinking forks, napkins being dabbed to mouths mid-laughter. I laughed, too. Really laughed. Someone brought up bad first dates. Someone else admitted to stealing a pen from the bank every week out of spite. And somewhere between dessert and seconds, it hit me. This was family. Not assigned by blood, but chosen. Intentionally. Authentically. I didn't feel forgotten. I didn't feel managed. I didn't feel small. I felt present. Toward the end of the evening, as we sat under the string lights I'd strung across the back porch, Margaret raised a glass. "To Eleanor," she said, "for being the kind of woman who reminds us that it's never too late to take your seat at the head of your own table." Everyone clinked glasses. I laughed softly. And I meant every word when I raised my glass and said, "To finally being seen." The knock came just after noon. Not loud, not urgent, but steady. Like he knew I was home and wasn't going to leave until I opened the door. I stood in the hallway barefoot watching his silhouette through the frosted glass. Christopher. It had been a week since the wedding. 7 days of silence from me. 7 days of unraveling for him. I opened the door slowly. He looked the same, but not really. The suit was gone. So was the glow. He wore a wrinkled t-shirt, dark circles under his eyes. His mouth tightened when he saw me like he'd rehearsed 10 different ways to start this conversation and forgot them all at once. "Hi, Mom." I didn't say it back. I stepped aside, let him in. He hesitated, then walked past me. The house was clean and quiet. Sunlight streamed across the living room floor. On the mantel, the photos were gone. Every last one of him. He noticed. His eyes flicked to the empty spaces. "Where are the pictures?" I ignored the question. "Sit down," I said. Calm, flat. He obeyed, sinking into the armchair across from me. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, he sighed, ran a hand through his hair. "I didn't come here to fight." I nodded. "Good. He shook his head. "I don't understand what happened. 1 minute everything was fine, and the next you're canceling things, posting checks on Facebook?" That stung. He didn't ask how I felt. He didn't say, "I'm sorry." He wanted an explanation. I stood, walked to the hallway closet, and pulled out a box. Set it down gently on the coffee table between us. "What's this?" he asked. "Receipts," I said. "Every one of them from the last 12 months. Venue deposits, dress fittings, caterer down payments. I even covered the extra dance floor you wanted. Remember that?" His eyes scanned the papers but didn't touch them. Then I pulled out the next item. The letter. His father's handwriting unmistakable. I didn't speak while he read. I watched his face, at first confusion, then recognition, then the slow, creeping shade of disbelief. He looked up. His voice cracked. "You knew." "I do now," I said. He swallowed hard. "So you're angry because I'm not angry because you're not my biological son," I said, cutting him off. "I'm angry because I raised you, Christopher. I gave you everything I had, and when the moment came for you to honor me, to stand up and say, 'This woman made me,' you sat down." He looked down, silent. "You let them push me into the kitchen," I continued. My voice didn't shake. "You watched them humiliate me, and you said nothing. That's what broke me. Not your DNA, not the money." He finally spoke, barely above a whisper. "I didn't think it would matter," Rebecca said. "She said it would be better for the pictures, for the look. I didn't think you'd be hurt." I laughed, cold, brief. "You didn't think?" "Exactly." I stood, walked over to the mantel, held up one of the empty frames. "This used to hold a photo of your kindergarten graduation. You had a missing tooth and marker on your shirt. You ran off the stage straight into my arms. I placed it face down. I'm done holding on to versions of you that no longer exist." He flinched like I'd hit him. "Mom?" "No," I said firmly. "I'm not your backdrop anymore. I'm not your bank. I'm not your afterthought." He looked at the floor, his jaw clenched. He nodded slowly. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "Too little. Too late." I picked up the box, closed the lid, handed it to him. "These are yours now. Take them. Every receipt, every record, every reminder of what you chose to overlook." He hesitated, then took the box. I walked him to the door. He paused at the threshold, looked back at me like he was searching for a crack, a softness, a sign that the door might open again later. But it wouldn't. "You always said I was your whole world," he said quietly. "You were," I replied. "And now I'm finally mine." Then I closed the door. The house was warm with laughter, real laughter. The kind that fills your chest and makes your eyes crinkle without you even noticing. The kind that echoes through the walls and reminds you you're alive. The smell of garlic and rosemary danced through the air. The table was set with care. Blue and sunflower yellow cloth, mismatched plates, cloth napkins folded into little fans. I had placed a candle in the center, not to impress anyone, just because I liked the way the flame made the silverware shine. My guests were gathered in the living room, sipping wine-sharing stories. Mr. Peterson was in the corner telling a story about how he once locked himself out of his house in his underwear. Everyone was howling. Margaret had tears in her eyes from laughing so hard. And me? I was standing in the kitchen, barefoot, holding a glass of wine, smiling, not waiting to be called in, not hidden behind a door, not forgotten. I was hostess. I was present. I was seen. I plated the last dish, roasted vegetables with thyme and sea salt, and brought it out. As I set it on the table, someone clapped. "Chef Eleanor strikes again," Margaret said with a grin. We sat, passed the bowls, poured more wine. Somewhere between the second helping and the last bite of cornbread, Margaret raised her glass again. "I think we should toast," she said. Everyone nodded. "To what?" Alice asked. Margaret turned to me. "To choosing yourself," she said, "and to knowing when to stop giving to people who only know how to take." Everyone raised their glass, and I finally fully raised mine too. I stood up. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't tremble. I looked at every face around that table. People who weren't bound to me by obligation or blood, but by choice, by love, by respect. And I said, to the mothers who stayed quiet for too long, to the women who gave everything and were told it still wasn't enough, to the ones who were asked to sit in the kitchen after building the damn house, this is for us. May we never sit down again unless it's at the head of our own table. Glasses clinked. Someone cheered. And I sat down. Not in the back, not out of sight, not in exile, but in my chair, my place. Christopher never called again. I didn't need him to. The people who matter were already here. The next morning I woke up to birdsong and light pouring through my window. No regrets. No tightness in my chest. Just peace. I made coffee, sat on the porch with my robe fluttering gently in the breeze. I looked out at my garden, roses blooming wild and bright. I wasn't someone's backdrop anymore. I was the main character in my own life. And finally, that was enough. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.